Hi there, I'm in front of what will be the zoo's biggest animal habitat ever, our 5-acre elephant trek facility. It has a gigantic barn and a super gigantic yard. The zoo is very involved in conservation around the world, and we're upping our game for what it will take to help protect Asian elephants. So a few years ago, our leadership team went to northern India to meet with some of the world's experts on what they're doing in such a crowded country to make room for elephants.
About 60% of the global population of Asian elephants, wild Asian elephants, the free-ranging Asian elephants, live in India. I started looking at elephants about 40 years ago. At that time, the estimates were between 12,000 and 15,000 elephants in the country, across the whole country. And today, 40 years later, the estimates are between 25,000 and 30,000 elephants across the country. So
in
elephants,
India.
In India alone.
Yeah.
And the elephants have increased by 50% to 100% across the country. So, so certainly that has been a success story in terms of numbers. So what the real challenges today are, how do you keep enough habitat? How do you protect the corridors? And then of course, the conflicts. You have a very kind of frequent interaction between people and elephants. Elephants come and raid crops, and occasionally people do get killed. So that is the major challenge. And I think once we are able to control that, we are able to mitigate conflicts, then I'm sure that the elephant will continue to survive. It will be accepted by the people, and it will continue to survive.
Unlike their African cousins who live out on the Great Plains, Asian elephants live in forests like the ones over on that hill. Their challenge is they have to get from that forest patch through a tea estate, over a river, through a farmer's field in order to get to the next forest patch. So these corridors that allow them to go through are essential for their survival.
A few years ago, we started this project called the Coexistence project, where I have a small team of people where we engage regularly with highly affected villages and tea gardens to educate people and make them more aware of safety practices. What we are trying to do is wherever elephants are using these areas outside protected areas to move between forest patches, the corridors in some sense, we are trying to enable peaceful coexistence between people and the elephants in the region by minimizing damages faced by people. With the rationale that if the losses to people are minimized, they will naturally accept elephants as part of the surroundings.
People have been living with elephants in this part of India for hundreds of years. And all of the families in this area, of course, are farmers. I'm standing in the middle of a rice paddy, and frankly, the first one I've ever seen. And it's remarkable to see the footprints of a great big bull elephant that walked through just last night. But over time, people have found creative ways to make room for elephants and room for people in their crops as well. One of the issues is that elephants will come into the fields, in this case rice paddies, and eat the crop. So they have these special towers where people can watch overnight.
These communities have been staying in the forest in the fringe areas for generations. They know how to share space with elephants. In fact, in this village there have been no human casualties because there is no frantic chasing of elephants when they come. It's all very peaceful and calm at night, even if elephants come into the fields.
Right from the Nepal border, right through to Assam. You have tea estates,
like this.
interspersed within elephant forests. And therefore, it's very common to see the elephants move through the tea gardens. So unless the owners of these tea gardens, they take proactive steps to harbor the elephants, in their land, and to protect them or whatever, conservation is going to be very difficult. If everybody drives the elephants away from their land, it's going to be very difficult.
And that is where the tea gardens come in, because the tea gardens provide more or less a safe passage to the elephants to move between one forest to the other.
Or sometimes we do a height reduction.
It's fun to get to tour the Naxalbari elephant-friendly tea estate with Sonia, the owner. She has quite a vision. The elephants are welcome on this estate, but there's a lot of drama when they're driven here from other farms or they're pushed out. It's fascinating to learn what it takes to help protect elephants.
Once they're inside the tea section, it's very hard for men to enter. Yeah, exactly. And it's too dangerous because they can't, if the elephants attack, they can't flee, right?
So I think Naxalbari tea estate is very special because you have an owner, Sonia, who is very passionate about elephants. And we could see that, she does not like the elephants to be, driven from one place to another place. and she actually welcomes the elephants to come into her tea estate. I think it provides a very interesting model of coexistence, which I hope can be replicated in other estates, across this landscape, so that the elephants do not feel stress and they can survive.
They come back at night and then the big chase and then they come back at night, and it's really stressful, right? So for 9 years, I didn't see any damage. They never damaged anything.
In a number of areas within the estate, she's established elephant corridors so that as the elephants are driven from other, say, rice paddies, they come into the tea estate where they are much less damaging because elephants don't like to eat tea. And this is a safe refuge for them. It takes a lot of work though, because they have to go then from here through over into other forested areas where they'll be safe as well.
One of the reasons why I got so excited by this elephant-friendly thing is that if we can sell elephant-friendly tea, then we can sell elephant-friendly anything. Then if I get these 16 farmers on board, and we have this insurance program, and then whatever's left, can I sell your rice for a premium? Because after all, you're not now, you've made this commitment to be non-violent with the elephants. I mean, what's the alternative? People die, elephants die, is that the alternative? People are crazy, elephants are stressed, is that the alternative? When other farmers even heard about that we were considering this, they were like, oh, we want to be part of this. So there is another way which is possible.
Coexistence has two sides to it. The first is that, we need to ensure that people are safe from elephants, because there are a number of people who get killed by elephants. So I think the most important task is to protect people's lives. At the same time, you need to ensure that the crops are not damaged by the wild elephants.
Now, I know a lot of your work is on human-wildlife conflict, especially human-elephant conflict. So what are people doing to help?
So the part of my research focuses on the negative interactions that people have with elephants and leopards in the region. The biggest challenge to human-elephant coexistence in the landscape is the large amount of human casualties that occur when people accidentally go close to an elephant. And so we have sort of tried to understand how these encounters occur over time and over space.
When we first came to India, I assumed that the elephants would be in protected areas and national parks, but it ends up that 80% of them live outside the parks. And of course, there is a lot of congestion. This is one of the most crowded countries in the world. The interesting part is that many of the elephants live relatively near congestion just like this. For instance, within 10 minutes of here is an area that we saw 20 elephants all in one group. And sometimes we saw as many as 10 right off a road just feeding. So hopefully, creative conservationists are able to create a world where people come to understand how to live with elephants, and elephants can survive living so near to people.
Just look there and you see a magnificent bull gaur that is just emerging from the forest there. Yeah, just look. And that was a real treat, We first had a family of 8 elephants that had 3 large females, and it had a number of juveniles and 1 calf. The calf was less than 1 year, and it had 3 young males actually.
When we arrived, I had no idea that we would even have a chance of seeing elephants out here.
They were feeding, and they came to the salt lake over there, and then after some time you had this deep-throated roar that came from the jungle behind us to our right. Then we knew that there's another family that possibly associated with this or related to this. We call these kin groups.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, within a few minutes, we had 9 elephants coming out. And again, they had little babies and they had young elephants, among them. To me, this is one of my favorite spots in West Bengal, to sit and watch elephants. So in total, this was again followed by 3 more elephants.
Yeah.
So in total, we had 8 plus 9, which makes 17, and then you had these 3 more elephants that came in. So we had 20 elephants out there in that glade. And I think the most interesting part of this was those elephants were healthy. They were in good body condition, and they were reproducing well.
Yeah.
You could see 2 or 3 very young calves in that herd, and a lot of other juveniles. So which means that this is a very productive elephant population, and that certainly also indicates that this population is a growing population. But even I did not imagine that this morning, the first thing that as soon as we land up here, we're going to get 17 elephants, all those deep-throated roaring, and it has been a wonderful experience, watching these elephants.
There's obviously a lot of excitement when people see wild elephants. We're on a highway headed to the national park, but the elephants are out here to greet us. We've seen hundreds of people going wild just to see these.
That's the amazing part about elephants here, because they are found, very close to human habitation, to settlement, to paddy fields, and to the roads and so on. And then, one chap actually foolishly sort of tries to go towards the elephant. But what amazed me was that one of the local guys who was there, he cautioned him. He said, "These are wild animals. Do not disturb them." So that gave me some hope that these people know what wild elephants are capable of, that one should not neither disturb them nor venture too close to them.
It's an exciting morning here at Kaziranga National Park. We've been fortunate to see wildlife throughout Northeast India, but this is the home to the great mammals of Asia. With any luck, today we'll see elephants, rhinos, buffalo, a wide variety of species.
We estimate there are approximately 1,000 elephants, 1,000 elephants on average that occupy this park. So one of our objectives is essentially to try and put collars on elephants, GPS collars on elephants.
So I'm a part of the radio collaring project, which is ongoing from a couple of years now in the Kaziranga Karbi Anglong landscape. With the radio collared elephant, you can get a point everyone are that where the elephant is, so you can track the movement of it, you could determine the seasonality of it. And especially when the floods happen, when the elephants cross the highway and go up on the hills, we don't know how much of the area they use within the Karbi Anglong, and when time do they come back, and what time do we expect to see them back in the park. So it's much important to radio collar an elephant from a conservation point of view to get an idea of the habitat usage and seasonality of elephants.
How many do you have collared in your study site, and what have you learned?
So in the current phase of the operations, we have already collared 3 females. The objective is to understand their precise movement routes as they move between one forest patch to the other, so that in future we can protect and preserve those areas to ensure population connectivity of the elephants across the entire landscape.
To try and determine what is the home range of these elephants outside the park, because then we can try to come up with some kind of a plan to involve the local communities here for the preservation of the habitat or protection of the habitat, make sure that the land use does not change adversely and excludes the elephants from that land.
But an elephant's a big animal, and yet we've seen places where they walk right through a farm or right even through a village.
So despite their phenomenal size, they have adapted quite well to human conditions and living with humans. So we have collared elephants and we follow their movement. Even local people in villages don't realize when the elephants walk past their houses at night, because they are moving mostly late at night when people are not active in that region. And surprisingly, elephants know when people are not active so that they can time their movement with those times.
All right, I'll tell you what. This is pretty amazing. I can see why they call this stuff elephant grass. It gets to be 10 feet tall. I've been looking for them everywhere. Here are fresh elephant prints. We've seen elephant dung. We even saw an elephant skull, so we know they're here. In fact, this is one of the densest populations of elephants anywhere in Asia, but they seem to be hiding, so we'll keep looking.
The tall grass is really, really tall. It is about 10 feet or 13 feet tall, so we would definitely, an elephant can hide in such a grass. So it is very, very difficult. And also this is a crop raiding season, so we expect the elephants to be out crop raiding and then coming back. And in some sense, of course, the park is really, really huge. It's a 1,000 square kilometer, 800 to 1,000 square kilometer park, and you're looking for 1,000 elephants, and they have their home ranges, and it's been a difficult task to find elephants, right?
And they're secretive.
Yeah.
As wildlife habitat is fragmented all over the world, conservationists are trying to create corridors to connect those areas so the animals can live safely. I always wondered what they look like. Well, you can see it here. Down that stream bed is where elephants walk from that side outside the park. They come up over this road, and then down in here you can even see their footprints as they come into Kaziranga National Park. The mix-up, of course, is they have to go over this highway, which is very busy. So the animals have to be both careful and lucky to survive.
You know, the government recognized the importance of this corridor some years ago, and you know, because of all the development that is generally taking place, the traffic on the highway and so on and so forth, it was imperative that this corridor is preserved. So about 200 acres of land connecting Kaziranga National Park to the Karbi Anglong Hills was actually purchased by the government.
And that's this land right here.
This, yeah. You know, this forest that you see here, through which actually essentially hundreds of elephants and, you know, so dozens of rhinos and, you know, a few tigers and so on, and they all pass through this. And I think that is a very strategic investment, and it's a very important investment for the long-term future of the elephants.
Maybe the thing I've been most fascinated by is everyone we've seen is interested in elephants. Everyone. We saw rice farmers and they're interested in making sure the rice is fine. We've seen people by the highway. Everybody's interested in elephants. They recognize they've got to be dealt with. I've been calling them an indomitable beast because you can't stop them, so you got to figure out how to live with them. Do you feel there's hope for elephants 100 years from now?
No, I certainly feel there is hope for the elephants.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, something about the elephant itself amazes me. How elephants adapt to human transformed environments. You know, we are seeing behavioral changes that allow the elephants to survive. You know, and actually thrive perhaps in human-dominated areas. At the same time, I think the key to the survival of the elephant and a host of other creatures is the deep reverence that people have for animals. You know, in this country, and that's probably the single most important factor that has ensured the survival of the elephant. The elephant is worshipped, you know, in Buddhist and in Hindu cultures, and therefore people revere the elephant as a reincarnation of the Buddha or as the Lord Ganesh, you know, the elephant-headed god, you know, of the Hindu pantheon. And this has certainly contributed to the long-term survival of the species. And I'm certainly very optimistic that the elephant will continue to survive for 100 years.
Well, the light's fading here on our last day afield in northeast India. And it really has been exciting. We've seen a lot of wildlife, met with a lot of people that are very dedicated to conservation. And of course, we came to really learn the life history, the habitat, and the conservation status of Asian elephants. And we got what we came for. It's a neat story of 21st century conservation. The Indian people care deeply about their elephants, and that's one of the big reasons they still continue to thrive, even in a crowded world.